Hey guys, so I wanted to make this video to describe how to solve mathematical proportions, and it's going to be pretty quick. I could go into more detail with more complicated proportions, but I just want to do some simple ones quickly. So proportions usually look like a comparison of two fractions that are equal to each other. So you'll have a numerator and denominator equal to another numerator and denominator. And your job is to figure out one of the missing pieces. Now, sometimes what happens is when you first learn proportions, you're given such simple ones that you don't really pay attention to the process for solving them. So maybe your teacher would give you something like 1/2 is equal to 3 over x. So depending on your number sense, you might be able to just look at that and simply know that the answer for x has to be 6, because 1 over 2 is 1/2, so 3 over 6 also reduces to 1/2, and that makes these equal on both sides. And that makes it seem like it's a pretty simple problem, but sometimes the numbers are more complicated and the answer is going to be like a fraction even. Like the answer that you would plug in for the answer would be a fraction. So you have like a fraction within a fraction. And that makes it seem more complicated, but they're actually really simple to solve. So I'm just going to set up a few and work through them to show you the process that I use to solve them. Some teachers don't like this process because they don't think that it is explaining or using enough mathematical concepts, but I feel like it really works quite well. I use it every time I solve proportions, so I'm just going to show you how to do it. So let's say the proportion, let's do example 1. Let's say the proportion was 7 over 8 equals 5 over x. Now in this problem, I don't want you to really think about comparing the 7 to the 5 and the 8 to the x. Really, when you're doing a proportion, the easiest way to solve it is to do cross multiplication. The reason why that works is because on this side we have a number divided by x. So the opposite of division by x would be multiplication by x. So really we're going to multiply x on both sides. Over here we have the 7 divided by the 8. The opposite of division by 8 is multiplication by 8. So we can multiply 8 on both sides. The reason we would want to do that is because fractions are more complicated to work with. So if we can eliminate a fraction, if we can take these denominators, multiply them on the opposite side of the equal sign, that will make it so I don't have a fraction anymore, at least until I get to the answer sometimes. So the most common way I've seen this taught is called cross multiplication, where the way I think about it is that it's actually the opposite of what these lines look like. So these equal lines look like you're going straight across, but to solve a proportion, we actually go diagonally. So I'm going to multiply the 8 times the 5. I'm going to bring the equal sign down, and then I'm going to multiply the 7 times the x. After I simplify that, I end up with this single equation that's really easy to solve. It's just 40 equals 7x. So if you were going to solve that, you can just get x by itself. To isolate x, because we're multiplying by 7, I can do the alternate or the opposite of that, which is dividing by 7. So here, my 7's reduce to, so 7 over 7 is going to reduce to 1, and I don't need to write that. And over here, 40 over 7 is an improper fraction, and you can't reduce it, so you can actually just leave it as 40 over 7, and you can write that as your answer. If you wanted to put that in your calculator and turn it into a decimal, that's perfectly fine as well. Let's try another example. So maybe you would have a problem like 10 over 8 equals 3 over x. So again, you're just doing the same thing. You're going to multiply these two multiply these two, bring down the equal sign. So 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 3. 10 times x, that's a funny x. 10 times x is 10x. And then to get my x by itself, I'm just going to divide both sides by 10. The 10 over 10 reduces to 1, which you don't have to write. And you're just left with the x. And 24 over 10, what I've found is if you're using this to solve any of the Khan Academy problems, Khan Academy will, sometimes they'll mark your answer wrong if it's not reduced, but sometimes they'll mark it right. For these, I've found if I write down the answer and it's not reduced, they still give me credit. So I could either write 24 over 10, I could reduce it and divide them both by 2, which would be 12 over 5, or I could divide it and actually get a decimal, which would be 2.4. So any of these three answers would be acceptable. For my last example, I'm going to go back over here and write it. I just realized I put the x in the denominator on that side for both of them. The x could be in any of the 4 places. So let's say the x was here. So x over 5 equals 3 over 2. So it's going to be the same thing. To solve this proportion, I can simply cross multiply. I bring down the equal sign. X times 2 is 2x. 3 times 5 is 15. And then to get x by itself, I'm just going to divide both sides by 2. So in that case, I would get that x is equal to 15 over 2, or 7.5. Hopefully this was helpful. Now, if you happen to have a proportion that has a binomial as a numerator or denominator, so an example would be, let's say they did x plus 1 over 5 equals 3 over 2. So in this problem, the issue is when you go to try to multiply, this one's easy, right? I can bring the equal sign down. 5 times 3 is 15. However, if you're going to be multiplying these two, you actually have to use the distributive property. And the 2 is actually going to multiply by the x as well as the 1. So 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 1 is 2. Then you have an equation that you need to keep solving. So you would move the 2 to the other side. You would get 13 equals 2x, and divide both sides by 2 to get 13 over 2 for x. So that turned out to be a lot of examples, and hopefully it was helpful. And I didn't prepare much for this video, so if you need me to make another one that's a little bit more organized, let me know. Have a great day.